If your definition of a mountain bike soundtrack is just nature, a rider, and some tires flying over the dirt, you'll love what this Scott Voltage eRIDE has to offer. Full suspension, carbon frame, and a light assist electric motor that makes almost no noise. Oh, and it's just 41.5 pounds and is being discounted with the new gen model now out. Today, we'll look at whether the savings are worth it and which rider is best suited for this bike. That's right, today we're talking about a last gen model. The new Scott Voltage is out with an updated motor with a bit more torque and a few other tweaks. But there are still tons of the older models around and it's now getting discounted pricing. So for those who don't mind yesterday's best tech and prefer pocketing some savings along the way, we'll be examining the Voltage eRIDE 920, which is the entry-level model. Although there are still higher spec of the older gen are also available, but will all come with the same frame, motor, and battery. The Voltage is based off the Scott Genius trail bike, but they gave it just enough electric spikes to help you outpace your acoustic bike riding friends and maybe get away without them knowing it's powered. At first glance, you might not even clock that it's an e-bike. It is that clean. Let's talk about the motor first because this is where things get interesting. The Voltage runs TQ's HPR50 system. If you haven't ridden one of these yet, the easiest way to describe it is natural, like eerily natural. The harmonic pin ring drive syncs up with your pedal stroke so seamlessly that you start to forget you've even got assistance. That is, of course, until you glance down and realize you're moving faster or up things you normally couldn't clear or holding a pace you'd never manage on your analog ride. And it does all of that quietly, whisper quiet actually. Most mid-drives hum or whir in the background, but this motor just kind of disappears under you. For folks who want the full mountain bike experience without the electric soundtrack, that's a big win. The HPR50 delivers 300 watts of max output and 50 Newton meters of torque. That's not as rowdy as other options, but that's also the point. This motor's job is to make you feel like your fittest self on your best day with nothing but strong tailwinds behind you, and it nails that vibe. Now let's talk about weight, and bear in mind I'll be quoting measurements here based on our size large test bike. Some things may change depending on which of the 4 sizes you end up looking at, but ours tipped the scale at just 41.5 pounds. Let that sink in for a second. A full suspension eMTB with 150 millimeter front and rear travel at barely over 40 pounds. That makes the Voltage one of the lightest eMTBs we have ever tested. What does that mean out on the trail? It means agility, light and poppy performance with a bit more playfulness than other more ground-bound eMTBs that support more weight. Yet downhill chatter doesn't throw it offline because the bike stays planted without feeling like a tank thanks to the frame's geo. That lightweight advantage comes courtesy of Scott's carbon HMF frame, plus some careful choices on the build kit. Let me walk you through the key pieces since this is where a lot of the value shows up. Up front, you've got a Marzocchi Z2 air fork, and out back, a Fox float shock that's tucked into Scott's integrated suspension technology. It's a super clean look. Everything hidden away, all the cables run internally, but there's an access hatch underneath to reach it, and there's a nifty little sag gauge on the rear linkage to help you dial in your pressure. There's a tiny trade-off in ease of service with the design, but in terms of presentation, it's just incredibly slick and modern. There's also Scott's TwinLoc technology, which connects with the suspension. Levers next to the dropper post can firm up the suspension or lock it out on the fly. It's handy for firmer riding on flow lines or locking it out on a climb to not waste energy, but you can fully open it right back up too with the push of a lever. The drivetrain is Shimano XT, a 12-speed with a 10 to 51 tooth cassette, paired to a 34 tooth chainring spinning on 175 mil cranks. Shifting was crisp and reliable, no complaints there, and braking comes from SRAM DB8 4 pistons with 200mm rotors front and rear for strong, consistent stopping power. The cockpit runs Scott-owned Synchros components across the board. a 780mm alloy handlebar, grips, Duncan dropper post, and Tofino saddle. And speaking of that dropper, the size large comes with a 210mm post, which is plenty of travel for getting low on descents. Wheel setup is more synchros. The X30S rims, tubeless ready of course, with Maxxis Dissector 29 by 2.6 inch tires front and rear. As for the Geo, our size large had a 63.9 degree head tube angle and 77.1 degree seat tube. It's got a 485mm reach and a 1,285mm wheelbase. Translation, it's slack and aggressive enough for some enduro-like trails, but balanced enough that you don't feel like you're wrestling the front end on climbs. You can also use different headset cups to adjust the angle to about 65 degrees if you want it steeper. The battery is TQ's 360 watt-hour internal pack, with an option for the range extender if you need more juice. That's a pretty small pack, but fits the low-weight theme of the bike. Charging happens through TQ's 4-amp charger. All right, so to sum up the vibe here, stealthy looks, featherweight build, ultra quiet motor, and ride quality that feels almost too natural for an e-bike. Right now it's on a discounted pricing of $5,609 from its original $6,599 MSRP. But for the most up-to-date pricing, click the link below. Now we've only scratched the surface here, so let's better understand that motor and battery setup. So Scott went with TQ's HPR50 drive, and this thing is all about subtlety. Instead of the usual gears or belts, it uses what's called harmonic pin ring technology. Sounds kind of fancy and it can get technical, but here's what it means. It uses a simplified inner and outer gear ring system. The system engages multiple teeth, transferring your pedaling power smoothly through just a few moving parts. And fewer parts mean less noise, less wear, and a super compact package that practically disappears into the bottom bracket. Now, don't expect this motor to win any arm wrestling contests against the big torque monsters out there. That's not its purpose. The HPR50 shines in how natural it feels and simulates the traditional bike experience. To me, it's kind of like having a spotter at the gym who gives you just enough help to nail a heavy lift. So when you're riding, you're still doing the work, but suddenly the hills feel smoother and you're covering ground at speeds you normally wouldn't. And that silence? Honestly, it's uncanny. Among the motors we've tested, this is one of the, if not the quietest. Riders who are hesitant about e-assist will love that it keeps the classic mountain bike feel. Honestly, it's easy to stay in your same heart rate zones, the same workout, just with a little more pace behind it, and a few more victories up otherwise hike-a-bike climbing sections with just a little more power to support the effort making the difference. The motor really rewards smooth cadence. Find that spinning sweet spot and it responds with nice acceleration and confident climbing. We'd actually recommend swapping out the stock 175mm cranks for something shorter just to help you hit that cadence more easily. On the efficiency side, the 360 watt-hour battery is decent size for a motor that just sips power compared to bigger systems that gulp it down. It hides neatly inside the down tube, helping keep the whole bike at that low weight. And the motor and battery together, only about 8 pounds of that 41.5 number. Now, a trade-off though is that the battery isn't user removable. You'll need to shop for service or replacement somewhere down the line. But if stealth, efficiency, and a featherweight build are priorities, this combo is right on target. The TQ system can expand as well. You can buy an optional 160 watt-hour pack that'll nestle into one of your bottle cage spots. That means if you want longer rides, you can boost capacity here by about 44%. Keeping with the Voltage's stealthy theme here is the display and controls that follow that same minimalist vibe. No big screens or busy menus, just the essentials, clean and simple. The display itself sits flush in the top tube. It's monochrome, understated, but functional. You get a battery bar across the top and expanding circles that show which assist level you're in. With a quick toggle of the power button, you can cycle through the key stats, percentage of charge, estimated range, speed, power output, or more just one at a time. That's it, no clutter, no extra layers of data to distract you on the trail. Now, if you're the type who does want more, that's where the TQ app comes into play. Mount your phone to the handlebar and suddenly it doubles as a bigger display, mirroring those same core metrics. But honestly, the app's best feature is the tuning. You can dive into the eco, mid, and high modes and really make them your own. Adjusting the power output in watts, tweak how much overall assist you're getting, even fine-tune the pedal response and top speed. So in my case, weighing in at 235 pounds, I bumped up the eco mode just a touch for more support. Mid and high felt usable for me from the jump, but it's nice to know you've got the flexibility to tailor things exactly to your riding style. The app also covers the practical stuff. It's got manuals, FAQs, firmware updates, And it has ANT Plus connectivity. That means you can pair a bike computer or a sports watch, syncing your ride data or heart rate with the rest of your fitness tools. So bottom line, the display is minimal by design, but paired with the app, it's got ways to tailor and increase the functionality. Whenever we test eMTBs for range, we use the same dedicated single track loop. It mixes green, blue, and black sections, so you're getting some real world blend of terrain. And to keep things consistent, we always ride in the bike's highest assist level. That way we can establish a baseline floor value of range, but mixed or conservative use will yield more mileage. With its 360 watt-hour battery, the smallest we've tested so far actually amongst the eMTBs, the Voltage got a max power effort of 18.3 miles with 1,339 feet of climbing. Now yes, that's one of the shortest ranges in our database, but here is the good news, it was the second most efficient. The Voltage only used 19.7 watts per mile, and for context, our eMTB average is closer to 25.6. So even though the pack is small, the motor is incredibly frugal with it. The result is about an hour and a half of trail time at full power, pretty solid for a pack of this size. Now we did notice that the battery drained faster on longer, steeper climbs than on flatter terrain. That's normal, but worth pointing out based on what trails you are looking to ride. On rolling trails or milder cross-country routes, you can expect noticeably more mileage. And just to be clear, we didn't engage Scott's TwinLoc suspension lockout during testing. Using that on climbs could stretch things even further if you firm it up in the right spots to not waste energy. If you need more, like I said, TQ offers a 160 watt-hour range extender, and based on our data, that bumps the total distance to around 26.4 miles. Now it does replace one bottle cage spot, but you still have room for a half-liter bottle in the secondary mount. For eMTB hill testing, we always run two climbs. First is the paved Devil's Backbone, half a mile with an 8% average grade where all e-bikes we test go. And then we take eMTBs to our water tower climb, which is longer at 0.86 miles, but with a milder 5.5% grade, but puts the bike in its dirt and rock natural habitat. So now we're gonna go to Justin to see how the Voltage did.
All right, we are out at the Devil's Backbone testing the Scott Voltage, a very lightweight, full suspension eMTB that features the TQ motor. This is their 50 Newton meters torque motor, so it is not meant to be a supercharger, push you up, anything like a Avanox or the new Specialized, with over 100 Newton meters of torque. This is definitely taking more of the lightweight approach, more natural approach. So as such, I do expect to have to push a bit more, which you're probably hearing me already. This hill a bit longer than Hellhole. And so it's a little bit more for me. So we'll see how it does. I also don't have a speedometer, so I can't give you a running commentary on how fast I'm going. So you mainly have to just check the final score so you can compare it against others. And I apologize if I have to take a few breaths between. Kind of expect it on a bike like this. Now out of the gate, one thing that has been incredible is how quiet that motor is. Like, if I wasn't getting assist up this right now, I wouldn't think there was a motor on if I was just listening to it. So I'm gonna let you listen and see if you can hear anything. Yeah, so probably the only thing you heard there was me shifting gears. So very impressive how quiet that is. And obviously I'm pedaling harder than I went on the rear hub, and a little harder than the full power mid drives. But one thing to note, this test will actually penalize the TQ more than it will be penalized on single track. So I don't really gain a ton of advantage with the bike being lightweight here, Whereas on the single track, it's gonna feel a whole lot different. So just keep that in mind as we finish this test out. Overall, I'm pretty impressed. All right, we are out here doing the water tower hill climb test with the Scott Voltage with that TQ HP 50 motor, 50 newton meters of torque, and really curious to see how this goes. I mean, the bike feels super lightweight, just lively. We'll see how it climbs. So I'll go for a minute here, and then I'll come back with my thoughts. Okay, so I've been riding this for a few minutes now, and first off, this is the quietest motor I've ever ridden. It's incredibly quiet. I mean, I have to really focus to hear anything. You probably didn't hear anything on the GoPro other than the wind. It was incredibly natural and just completely makes me forget that I've got a motor down there. In terms of responsiveness, in terms of power, I think your opinion on what you think is going to kind of depend on where you came from. If you came from a full power eMTB, it's going to feel light. If you came from an analog bike, been riding that for years, you jump on this thing, it's going to be a blast. So it really kind of depends somewhat on your perspective, but I think the time will show that. But I mean, the power distribution, very natural, nice. Again, I'm on highest power setting. If you can hear me, I'm breathing a little bit more than normal for sure. So you work a little more on this bike, but it still helped me up that hill for sure. And I mean, I love that light, playful feeling even going uphill. So as we finish out the test, we'll go check the results, see how this compares to the other models we've been testing over here.
On Devil's Backbone, the Voltage topped out in 2 minutes and 53 seconds, averaging 10.5 miles per hour. On the water tower climb, it clocked 4 minutes and 44 seconds with an average speed right around 11. Now, compared with our eMTB averages on both courses of 209 on the Devil's Backbone and 336 on the water tower, the voltage is slower, no doubt about it. But this is where I say again, that's also sort of the point. The HPR50 motor isn't designed to be the torque king of the mountain. It's designed to feel natural, and in that respect, it nails it. Both climbs felt smooth and consistent, with the motor blending in like an invisible partner. You're still working, still pedaling, but you're outpacing your analog self by a comfortable margin. That makes this bike perfect for a couple of types of riders. Anyone looking to reclaim a step that they may have lost, and newer mountain bikers trying to hang with a group of experienced friends. The voltage keeps the ride authentic without the extra weight and bulk of a full power setup. So if your goal is to conquer brutal extended grades with raw torque, there are better options out there. But if you're after a modest boost that keeps your cadence natural and your ride lively, the voltage is right in its element.
First impressions on this bike. We've had some time to ride a few different trails and adjust suspension pressures and kind of play with some things, but when I first set up this bike, I didn't know what the travel numbers were, so just set the pressures at Scott's recommendation, and when I got on the bike, I thought this was their short travel light eMTB, which it is absolutely not that. But the suspension kinematics and just how this bike rides in general, it just felt really firm, supportive, and honestly just felt like a short travel 29er. So I was able to dive in a little bit more after that first ride to, you know, what this bike is, and I found that there's some really unique things that set this bike apart from a lot of the other e-bikes in this category. So we'll get into that in just a minute. So I want to talk ride impressions first and foremost with the motor, the TQ HPR50. I absolutely love this system. It is by far the least obtrusive, or should we say the least annoying e-bike system that I've ridden to date. You can hardly see it and you can hardly hear it. I mean, it is as silent of a system as I've been on. Now, with that, it is also on the lighter spectrum of power. So it just gives you subtle bits of help here and there, which personally, I mean, I absolutely love it. It just feels like the closest thing to a natural non-motorized mountain bike that I've ridden. The Voltage is essentially Scott's e-version of the Genius, which is their all-mountain enduro bike. And when you look at the Scott, a lot of these newer Scott bikes have the shock contained within the frame. It's really easy to get to this shock when you want to, but what it does actually, and I when I first saw the new Scott Genius, I actually thought it was an e-bike, because they've taken the frame and they've built it up around that shock, and it actually just makes that bottom bracket kind of look like a lot of your SL bikes. So as far as the inconspicuousness, I don't know if that's a word or not, but of both the Genius and the Voltage, I think there are other bikes that are more inconspicuous from a visual standpoint, just because of how they've housed the shock. because the motor itself from TQ is extremely small, and for the most part it's no bigger than a lot of bottom brackets in regular bikes, and with that you get absolutely no rattle and a very quiet ride feel. Man, so when you point this bike downhill, I mean, going uphill, honestly what it feels like is like an extremely efficient XC bike, and you on your best day ever, right? Like it's just enough to not overpower your ride. So one of the things that I think, another thing that is unique to Scott bikes is how they've integrated the TwinLoc system. Man, this bike is so good. So on the left side of your handlebars, right above the dropper post, you've got a couple of levers that can increase how stiff that rear shock and fork feel when you're going down a trail. So the reason why I thought this was really a game changer is because this bike, as I mentioned before, is that 155, 160 travel bike, which kind of sits in that light enduro all mountain category. So it can handle, you know, most trails, like pretty much anything you want to throw at it. And so if you do set the bike up a little bit more on the softer side with lighter pressures, you can hit those big chunky rough downhill sections. And then when you get to that, you know, time where you're climbing, or if you hit a jumpy flow line, you can press that lever to stiffen up the suspension, and so that it doesn't soak up, you know, all that energy when you're pumping through turns and boosting off lips and things like that. So it's really cool because it just gives you the ability to transform your bike mid-ride without having to really change a lot of the things or settings on your suspension, which, I mean, I can't think of many bikes off the top of my head that you can do that with just, you know, the press of your thumb. I have to admit, when I first saw that feature on this bike, I thought, oh, that's kind of pointless. I see where it's a big benefit on like a Scott Genius or a lot of the other Scott bikes, but why on an e-bike? And the more I rode this bike, the more it made sense to me that it actually has a place on this bike, not only for climbing, but more specifically for descending. Of course, does that mean you are going to use it like that? I mean, I don't know. That's kind of up to the user how they want to use that system, or I mean, not at all. You can of course take it off, but I would suspect that most users or potential buyers for this bike are going to be intrigued with the fact that you can have a lot of adjustability in your suspension with a push of your thumb. So my overall take on the Scott Voltage is I think it is a bike that doesn't get a lot of attention and has kind of gone under the radar for how good it actually is. And if you take some time to, and if you like fiddling with suspension and like to customize how your bike rides, and if you, quite frankly, kind of want multiple bikes in one bike, I would say this this bike will fit the bill. So the it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There's a couple things where I would personally like to see some improvement. The first one is that this bike comes, this is a size large, and it comes spec'd with 175 mil cranks. And since these this system is really better utilized with higher cadences, I would like to see shorter cranks spec'd from factory. Of course, I mean, you can get the bike and change the cranks, but I mean, I would like to see it come from Scott with that already optimized. So, you know, that 160s, possibly even 155s, allows you to get the RPMs up a little higher, so the motor's a little bit more efficient. The other thing that I know is going to be kind of divisive is the internal headset routing. I think it really makes the cockpit look clean. However, there's going to be, you know, issues when it comes to wanting to change headsets or some other things maintenance wise. It's just kind of an inconvenience. But if you're the guy who really just kind of takes the bike to the shop, let them mess with it, it's really, I don't know, I personally don't think it's that big of a deal, but you know, to each their own. So yeah, between the long cranks and internal headset routing, I would say other than that, is a fantastic bike. I mean, and we've been testing one of the lower spec models, has a Marzocchi fork, you know, Marzocchi suspension, DB8 brakes, XT, Shimano drivetrain, and I mean, the brakes are great, drivetrain's great. I'm a fan of wired cable actuated drivetrains. Just one less thing you got to worry about, you know. And this Shimano stuff just works so smooth. It's just a great system. And obviously, you know, some of the higher spec models will feel a little bit different with different components, but for the most part, I mean, even at this base spec, the bike is phenomenal. I would say the ideal rider for the Voltage is somebody that maybe is curious to test out e-bikes. You know, if you're sensitive to the weight of a full power e-bike, this will feel, you know, just very, very similar to a non-powered e-bike, which I know there's a lot of people out there that, you know, it's just kind of nice not to have that adjustment if you want to ride both your regular bike and an e-bike. This will be, you know, probably the closest thing to how your regular bike feels. The other person this would really help, you know, somebody that just maybe just needs a little assistance. Maybe you're getting into mountain biking and you've got some friends that ride on regular bikes. This would really help in just kind of getting into mountain biking. I mean, there's some definite hurdles to overcome getting into mountain biking from a fitness standpoint and handling, and this bike really, like, it will handle anything you throw at it. It is absolutely phenomenal. Now the other thing, and this is just my suggestion, and that's, I would love to see what this bike would ride like as a mixed wheel 27.5 rear, 29 front. because I mean, it already feels really stable on the downhill, but it lacks a little bit of that playfulness that you do get on some other bikes. So that would be my suggestion. But overall, I have really enjoyed the time testing this bike, and the standout feature to me is that TQ system. It is so quiet, so easy to deal with.
All right, Bryce took you out on a nice long ride, so I'll just recap our going away quality thoughts. On the trail, the Voltage feels light, poppy, and way more confident over rough ground than you'd expect for an e-bike this slim. Straight line speed is fun and playful. As a full 29er with longer chainstays, it doesn't slice through the tightest corners as quickly as some mullet setups, but it's still capable. The suspension is supportive and efficient, not super plush, but more than enough to keep things comfortable and composed. And Scott's TwinLoc system really impressed us. Being able to firm it out for climbs or open it up for descents makes a big difference in how efficient and playful the bike feels. I was a skeptic at first, but I'm kind of coming around to its use case. And of course, the stealth factor here is off the charts. It just looks like a pure trail bike, just with a little secret inside. Okay, let's dive into some simplified pros and cons, starting with the good stuff. And first up, the TQ motor. This delivers one of the most natural and realistic assists that we have tested. It blends so smoothly with your pedaling that you almost forget it's electric until you realize you're moving faster than usual. And thanks to its harmonic pin ring design, it is whisper quiet. Next is the weight. At just 41.5 pounds, this is one of the lightest eMTBs that we've tested, which makes handling and agility a breeze. Not to mention throwing it in the truck a whole lot easier. Now pair that with a clean, stealthy look that doesn't scream e-bike, and some may or may not love the look around the bottom bracket, but personally, we have no qualms about it. The 150/150 suspension feels supportive, and Scott's TwinLoc adds real versatility. Battery efficiency is solid too, with the option to bump the capacity by 44% if you want the extender. And honestly, the spec sheet overall is pretty well-rounded. The drivetrain, tires, brakes all work well right out of the box for whatever riding you're doing, and not bad for the entry-level priced carbon model. On the downside, that stealthy design does come with trade-offs. Maintenance access is tighter if you like doing your own wrenching, and the battery isn't removable, so no quick swaps or off-bike charging, which is more common these days with eMTBs. So here's the bottom line on the Scott Voltage eRIDE 920. This bike delivers exactly what it sets out to accomplish. It's an eMTB that feels remarkably close to a traditional mountain bike, only it isn't. Underneath that sleek carbon frame is a quiet little helper, giving your legs the boost to climb higher, ride longer, and still keep your heart rate in the workout zone. Or down a zone perhaps, depends on how you use it. On the trail, the Voltage is a sweet balance of confidence and playfulness. It stays composed over rough terrain, but it's still light enough to pop over rollers or jumps without hesitation. The spec package is solid across the board, so whether you're winding through switchbacks, hammering some flow trails, or dipping into a downhill line, the bike is plenty of fun, and now at some of its best value pricing. And honestly, this is the perfect option for riders hesitant about e-assist. If you love the essence of mountain biking and don't want to lose it, the Voltage keeps that feel intact. It just extends your best days and sneaks in a little extra fun. Plus, with its stealthy look, it'll be tough for anyone to immediately clock it as an e-bike. That'll do it for this Scott Voltage eRIDE review. For current pricing and where to pick one up, check the link down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to keep up with all the latest. I'm Griffin with Electric Bike Report, and I'll see you on the next ride.